Thank you for tuning in. Today I'd like to give you some clarity about the difference between service animals and emotional support animals and how each one is handled when it comes to housing. The difference between the two mostly comes down to the type of animal, what it's been trained to do, and what tasks it's performing for its owner or handler. So a service animal is an animal that has been trained to perform specific tasks for a person with a disability. It has to be either a dog or it can be a miniature horse. Yes, you heard that right. I know the thought of a mini horse walking around an apartment building sounds kind of silly, but this is a real thing. And service animals are covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act, also known as ADA. The ADA leaves a broad interpretation of what tasks a service animal can perform. The probably best known type of service animal would be the seeing eye dog or the guide dog. That helps a blind person navigate. But they can do a lot of things like detect seizures before they happen, or retrieve medication for their owner in an emergency. And there are many more things that a service animal could potentially be trained to do. To establish whether it's a service animal, it's really two questions. Is it a dog or a mini horse? And is the animal trained to perform a specific task or tasks for its owner slash handler? If the answer to both those questions is yes, then you have a service animal. Per the ADA, a service animal can accompany its handler anywhere they go, and that includes obviously in their home. So this means apartment buildings slash landlords have to allow a disabled person to have their service animal in the home with them. Also, they cannot ask you or force you to prove that your service animal is a service animal. There is really no such thing as a registered service animal. It's either a service animal or it's not, and nobody can force you to provide documentation to prove that it is. There are two questions a business can legally ask about a service animal, and those are, is this a service animal required because of a disability? And the second question is, what task or tasks is the animal trained to perform? Once they ask those questions, that's the end of it. They cannot ask you to prove it. So next up, we have emotional support animals, also known as ESAs for short. An ESA is an animal that helps a person with emotional or psychological conditions like anxiety, depression, or PTSD, and they can help in many ways, a lot of times just by being present. And there are many animals that can be ESAs. It can be cat, dog, rabbit, birds, reptiles, you name it. And they don't have to be trained to perform a specific task. If you have a mental health condition and your dog welcomes you and wags its tail at the door when you get home, or if your cat does silly things that make you laugh, then they are fulfilling the role of an ESA. Unlike service animals, ESAs are not covered by the ADA. They are not necessarily entitled to go wherever their owner goes, and landlords can require documentation, like a letter from a doctor stating that you have a mental health condition and the ESA is necessary for your mental health. However, there are some legal protections for ESAs per the Fair Housing Act, and a lot of states have their own laws about this as well. These protections are, number one, that your landlord has to allow you to have the animal even if they don't normally allow pets in the property. They cannot charge you any fees for having it, and they cannot enforce breed restrictions. So even with an ESA, you are entitled to have the animal in your home and do not have to pay your landlord to do so. However, with service animals or ESAs, If your animal causes damage to the property, the landlord can charge you for reasonable repairs. There are some exemptions to the Fair Housing Act rules. For example, if making the accommodation to allow the animal would cause the landlord undue financial burden, or if the animal poses a threat to the property or other tenants, the landlord could get an exemption to prohibit the animal. Also, owner-occupied buildings with 4 units or fewer, or some single-family homes rented without a broker, may be exempt from Fair Housing Act rules altogether. At the end of the day, if you have a service animal, if you have an ESA, you can have it in your home, and you should not be charged any fees just for having the animal. If you feel that your landlord has violated your rights or your legal protections when it comes to your service animal or your emotional support animal, you can file a complaint with the Illinois Department of Human Rights or the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development at the federal level. If you need legal advice or are not sure about your rights, you should seek advice from a licensed attorney. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel to be notified whenever I post a new helpful video like this one.